ESPD. Just seeing.
All right, are we ready to start?
We are ready, Chair Laird.
Okay. Hi, welcome everybody to this meeting. I'm Melissa Laird, Chair of the County Budget Committee for the ESPD Budget Committee Group, and I call this meeting to order.
Thank you, Chair Laird. Commissioner Fye.
I'm here, Kevin. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Bruce, are you with us? You're muted there, Bruce. There you go.
I'm here. How are you?
You're good. Welcome. Dick.
I'm here.
Chair Harrington.
Here.
Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Commissioner Treese.
Here.
Chair Laird.
Here.
Right, Madam Chair, you have a quorum of 8.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to a refresher of the budget as proposed for each district. So we're going to this first hour is with the Urban Road Maintenance District. And so I can turn that over to Tanya. No, yes.
Chair, we're waiting for the slideshow to be
up.
So
all right,
you can just wait one moment.
Sounds great.
You mean I wasn't the only thing late?
That's not late.
That was not late.
Mark Joggers is trying to make sure I'm excited about a 16-hour flight.
Okay.
Chair Laird, I would like to first allow this time for interpretation to give instructions this evening. Once again, we have interpretation services available in ASL as well as Spanish. So Victor, I will ask that you please take us through Spanish interpretation instructions.
Thank you very much. I'll start in Spanish and also give the instructions in English. Bienvenidos a todos. Inglés y español estarán disponibles para esta reunión. Si está usando una computadora de escritorio o portátil, haga clic en el icono de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla de su computadora. O si está utilizando una aplicación de Zoom a través de un dispositivo móvil como un teléfono inteligente o una tableta, presione los 3 puntos con la leyenda más en la parte inferior derecha o superior derecha de la pantalla y así de esa manera podrá seleccionar su idioma preferido. Si desea escuchar la reunión en inglés, seleccione inglés o si prefiere español, seleccione español. Si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor envíe un mensaje levantando la mano virtual en Zoom para poder obtener la ayuda. Muchas gracias y bienvenidos. Welcome everyone. English and Spanish will be available for this meeting. So if you're joining us through a desktop or laptop computer, please click the globe icon with the word interpretation located at the bottom of your computer screen. Or if you're using the Zoom app through a mobile device, such as a smartphone or a tablet, press the 3 dots with the word more at the bottom right or upper right-hand side of your screen. That way you will be able to select your preferred language. If you want to hear the meeting in English, please select English, or if you prefer Spanish, select Spanish. And you can switch channels at any moment, but please make sure to select one just so that you don't miss any of today's content. If you have any questions, please raise your virtual hand on Zoom to get help. Thank you and welcome. If we can go to the next slide, please. También vamos a tener disponibles las diapositivas en español, así que si quiere seguir la presentación, por favor vaya al sitio web del condado, donde puede cambiar el idioma también. Haga clic en prioridades, después el presupuesto del condado, y de ahí va a poder descargar la diapositiva. Also, we have slides available in Spanish, so please go to the county's website where you can also change the language to Spanish. And click on priorities, then budget of the county, and from there you can download the slides. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you. So we went through the agenda or the call to order and we have a quorum. So here on the slide is just briefly the agenda for tonight. We did the welcome and call to order. We will go through a refresher on each one of the budgets proposed for each district. We're going to do Urban Road Maintenance District first at 6:30, and we'll go through the full discussion with that budget. And then at 7:30, we'll be doing the same agenda for the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District. After the refresher, there'll be a committee discussion and questions. Following that will be testimony from members of the public and community organizations. And then at the end, we will have budget committee action after each presentation and take a vote to approve or not the budget. So just generally guidelines for community input. We're happy to have people here from the public and provide more input. I always appreciate that. The input will occur at the end of the meeting so that you can hear and refer to the presentations and discussions. We get 2 minutes for each individual and 5 minutes for an organization. And if you already told Kevin that you were going to testify, Kevin will take over at that time and he'll guide that discussion. All right, we'll turn it over to Sherry to go over the overview for the Urban Road Maintenance District budget.
Thank you,
Sherry.
Teresa. So we're here tonight to talk about the Urban Road Maintenance District budget. URMD. URMD is a county service district created to provide road maintenance within its boundaries for the roads and streets within its boundaries, specifically neighborhood routes and urban locals. It has a large population, about 211,000 residents, which would make it the second largest city in Oregon if it was incorporated. And the URMD is funded by an assessment of just under 1/4 per thousand. It is assessed only on district residents, as the fund is insulated and can only be used for road maintenance within the district. Next slide, please. Providing service or service requests is one of the functions within that the county provides within the URMD. And here you have a pie of the different service requests that we received in the last full completed fiscal year, which was June 30, 2022. You can see the majority of, well, not the majority, but the category with the most requests is vegetation, which would be trimming bushes and making sure that the right of way is clear of vegetation. Next slide, please. Here we have the budget summary. Revenue on the left, expenditures on the right. The main programs within the URMD are the pedestrian and biking improvement projects, neighborhood streets program, and we are preparing a sidewalk repair grant program, which we hope to bring online around the end of the summer. But the primary purpose for URMD, as we said earlier, is road maintenance. Indirect admin and miscellaneous costs for the pedestrian and biking program and for ADA ramps are included within their respective amounts shown on this summary. $138,000 for ped and bike and $880,000 for ADA. Indirect costs for all other programs combined is anticipated to be 4% as shown, an improvement from 5.8% in fiscal year 23. We practice good stewardship of URMD funds and are building contingency at a steady pace, adding to it each year with a goal of $5 million next year, which is approximately 30%. That wraps up our report today. Do you have any questions?
Any questions by any of the budget committee?
Commissioner Rogers, do you go ahead? Oh,
Nope.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
no, I was going to ask you if you were going to raise the topic we had discussed. So I was hoping you would.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Let me say the same thing as I said last year, and I would defer. I think the chair asked me in the prior meeting, for those of you who are watching, to bring up this at the board level, and I'll do that one first, and then maybe to her point in a moment. One, if you go back to the budget, you can see assuming that we're not taking and planning for things not being completed on time, there's only about $5 million that is going to be a contingency, which is in essence an ending fund balance, which means that there's going to be, if you continue the budget expenditures at the current levels, you got one more year and that's it, and then you're in a deficit position. So I would encourage us once again, as I did with an earlier one, to have that discussion about what's this going to mean to the ERMs. A few years ago, when the pavement policy was met and everybody was happy with the level of service, we started doing a lot of off-road, which is, we always have encouraged that, but we really started doing it in this fund for sidewalks, bike and ped improvements in various areas, and it's not sustainable. So I'm hoping that we are going to have that discussion at some point, and that's either at the budget level here in the future or at the board level. I think it's important. To the chairs, the other chairs, I got two chairs here tonight. To the board chairs, comment when she and I were chatting about a different subject. It appears that this was always designed to be self-sustaining, with no funds coming in from the county itself. It was supposed to be, for those of us, and I admit I'm one of those people, I'm in this district, we would pay whatever it costs to maintain this particular district. And I think at some point, either our county board, with the assistance, again, I like budget committee input, should discuss how this is going to be maintained without infusion of county-wide dollars. And I think it's an important discussion and an important topic that needs to be dealt with sooner than later. So instead of confusing chairs, Catherine, did I do justice to what I was talking to you about on the phone?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
To your first point on the budget summary, I think on the slide, it's laid out nice and clearly that the tax revenue that comes in is less than what the expenditures are on the way out, and that's not sustainable year over year. So it's a matter of questioning. One could surmise that needs are greater than the revenue or the expenses, and they're appropriate expenses for servicing the number of URMD, UUA roads. So
do you want to answer or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start and you can fill in
Okay,
if
perfect.
maybe. First, in public works, it's common for expenditures to trail revenue year after year. So, and that's exactly what's happening here.
well, but this is over double.
It is, yes. And so appropriations you can see the ped and bike improvements program is the largest expenditure within the earned. And those appropriations occurred during selection years, so biennially. And so those are incurred. And then that first year, there is a small amount allotted to it. And then the design comes in within the next 24 months. And then the construction comes in within the next 24 months after that. And so they can trail up to 4 years. And that's exactly what's happened here. We're very mindful of making sure that we don't exceed what our actual funding is.
Oh, exactly. I know that. But rather there's the concern, is the revenue collection sustainable over time for the costs that the maintenance takes year over year? In the last meeting, you talked about overlays versus
Slurry seal.
slurry seal. Thank you.
Fortunately, with the pedestrian and biking improvement program, there is a lot of flexibility there, and the allotment for new project selected is not set in stone and it's not consistent year after year. So there's quite a bit of variation that can happen depending on the funding that's available.
Exactly. I know you do have variables that you can adjust.
Mhm.
At the end, from a community lens standpoint, there are some community members that go, well, you know, what's happening here? We still have sidewalk gaps, right? I love the minor betterment program. I think URMD is trying to address gaps as fast as it can. But at some point, we do have to provide some reconciliation if we can for our community, that at the current funding level, given this current known need, it's going to take this amount of time unless we entertain a different funding scheme. That's all. And that isn't clear to any of us right now.
Right, and there's a lot of things that are happening within those projects, the internal accounting that's going on to keep track of those monies to make sure that we aren't getting into any sort of a deficit spending situation. That's not what we're doing.
Right.
But you're right, it is something that there's the need exceeds the resources.
Yep.
And that is something that, you know, we at the staff level and then the advisory committee know firsthand. We have an excess of work to be done. And so working with the committee to try to figure out how best to tackle that, at the same time, providing that core service of road maintenance. We're fortunate that we've, over time, have invested a lot of resources into keeping track of our pavement condition, so we know where we're going with it. One thing that we've been, and everyone's been subject to is, you know, things that are happening, you know, in the world and the economy. So where prices are going up, costs are, you know, material shortages are happening. And so we try to lay these programs out, as Sherry mentioned, 18, 24 months in advance. We don't know what's going to happen at that point in time. So we're using the best information at the time for planning, but then we're having to be nimble and make those adjustments. There is no, you know, there's no mandated spending amount that we have to do when it comes to these projects. There's no, there's nothing that's requiring us to do certain things. So that does give us a chance to really kind of keep the numbers in check when it comes to how big of a project selection program we're going to have, or how much we're going to spend on paving or slurry seals or whatever that might be. But I will say, though, that in the last 2-3 years now, with everything that's been happening in the world, and then even locally, it has been more challenging to really kind of pin down where that sweet spot is. And it's just, you know, it's just the nature of where we're at. And we're seeing that across the board. All of our construction projects are seeing these increases. They're all seeing the equipment or the material shortages. It's just something that we're really, I think, it's starting to kind of come to a head now with the numbers that we're seeing. But Melissa and Dick are both on the advisory committee. They know firsthand about the challenges that we've been facing, and we're having to do a little bit of a shifting of our approach this coming year, but I think it's still going to be, you know, a successful way to fill those gaps and get projects built for the community. But it will be a smaller program.
Yeah, and just jumping in there. So it's really clear to the advisory committee that the number one job for is road maintenance. And the reason they're there is to do a good job with the roads, and that the bike ped improvement program is whatever we can do, what's left, what money we have available for that program. This year, we're going through that. We've gone through that discussion with the advisory committee in the last meeting about the fact that, you know, costs are going up and things are getting squeezed, and we're looking at a much smaller budget this year. And we're actually going through a whole different way of selecting the 150% group there, with a lot of input from the community on what does that mean and what projects do we want to look at. And as Commissioner Rogers, you know, the list of requests for roads and sidewalks and pedestrian crossings and, you know, neighborhood signaling devices is huge, you know, and it's never going to get smaller. It's always going to be big. So one of the things we do have to address, and would like to look at in the advisory committee after we do our bike ped improvement selection this summer, is to how to look at kind of getting out to the community and telling them kind of the story about, you know, we have this much, we have these many requests, we have this much money. And some of these requests, so it's going to take longer to do them. And some of these requests are at a level and complexity that the bike ped improvement program is not going to be able to solve. I mean, if we did that, we'd only do one project a year. So what do we do with some of these requests that have come in that are $1 million, $1.5 million for, you know, sidewalk and flashing lights, which this program will no longer be able to address or support. And what does that mean? And what do you do with those? So there's a lot of, I think, gnarly discussion that we're going to have this year. The advisory committee is 100% on board and helping make it happen. And there's how many of us? 12, 8 of us.
8 of 10.
Lively guys working hard to help solve that problem. So,
Well,
and you guys are doing a great job managing everything through that.
and I think part of what might be helpful is when you look at the budget pages year over year in the budget, they don't really change much. The descriptions aren't changing. So the ebb and flow of what you're talking about for programs coming in every other year, you know, and then what you talked about with slurry seals versus overlays, there is white space in the budget book on the page for URMD. And let's start speaking to that a little bit more. It doesn't, I'm in no way am I advocating for changing the role of the advisory committee. I love how the advisory committee works. But I think there's a little bit more of a story that can and should be told in the budget book.
Yeah, because I think the categories are always the same, and surface treatments means different things depending upon the year, right? So you're saying that there's a level of data underneath those titles that change on a regular basis that we could probably, you know, pull out more.
Right, and when there's sort of a complementary document that will get presented to the board on the same day as the budget is our annual road maintenance program. And inside the road maintenance program is all the detailed information, which will have project lists, and it will have the roads
for that level of detail.
Right, that's what I'm saying, right? But there's something in between. Something in between that kind of fills that.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the best advisory committees because it's very active. I mean, you guys have given to the advisory committee the role of selecting the projects for the bike ped improvements program, and that is our responsibility. So that means we take that to heart. We go out there and we look at we get the agreement on what's the list of ones we're going to look at and choose from, and then every one of the members, our job is road trip during the summer. We're out there. We have to visit these proposals, check them out, and we all come back with our own prioritized list of here's what we think is the right order, and then we have this lively discussion at our meeting to come up to, you know, what is the final decision for that we will present to the Board of Commissioners for using that money. And it's always lively, but at the end of the day, it's a good consensus. We've never had a time, at least while I've been there, that we haven't gotten unanimous support on this is the prioritized list and here's the cut line. But it's I mean, it's a really meaty role for advisory committee members. It's great. It's a good role model.
Commissioner Rogers?
Yeah, I'd like to make one more comment. If we could go back to the budget itself, one slide, and then a request. If one looks at that, there's some gain share money in there, which is countywide, and that's what we were addressing. And if you look at it, the only money carryover is that contingency of 4.47, and that's where I was saying about $5 million. This meeting, and I think Chair Harrington was getting at the transparency, and as well as saying, what's the story being told? And I've heard at the last meeting, which I'm going to echo again and make a request. Greg Munn, you know, under Oregon statutes, it's 294, the local budget law section, that this budget is supposed to be done on a cash basis in essence. And what I'm hearing staff say is that they've included projects over a multitude of years. So that's why we don't have a very good picture, because they're saying, well, we got some money and we're putting a project in, but it may not be done for 2 or 3 years. That's one. Not only I think you might take a look at the budget law in the ORSs, to say that that's not really the way we're supposed to be doing things, but also it's very difficult, as Chair Harrington has mentioned, to see the story because you can't tell if you're floating projects from year to year to year. It's supposed to be on a cash basis. And what are you really going to spend? And that would be very helpful. So I would request, you're not going to do it tonight before we adopt it, I understand, but maybe in the future, not only do you stick with the statutory requirements for building a budget, but we have an understanding of what that cash carryover is going to be so that we know what's being done, because it looks like you're spending about 12 million and you got 5 million carrying over, and that's not a bunch of money. I mean, if you get about 5 and you're spending 12, next year you're going to have half the, not half the projects, and the year after that you're going to have 5.9 if you continue, or about 6 million in taxes coming in, because the gain share money, I don't see how we're going to continue to take countywide money and put it in this particular account. So that's my request, that we take a look and say, well, what really are we spending? It's impossible based upon how you built the budget to know how this thing is flowing. And that's no criticism to staff. I know you're doing a good job, and it's just the way you've built it historically and the way it's supposed to be built. So that's my comments, and thank you, Chair Laird, for taking.
Oh, thank you. Are there any other comments from anybody? Dick?
Yeah, thank you. So my perspective about the head and bike projects is to think about them as mini capital projects. And they're smaller than major capital projects, of course, that are bonded and so forth. But the projects are selected, and as staff has already said, it takes some time to do the detailed planning, the design, and the construction can't happen in the same year. It takes, depending upon the size of the project, certainly more than the 1 year when the projects are approved. And I think that's what we're seeing financially. I can't give you the detailed numbers, of course, but looking at the beginning balance, that is really there to pay for the projects that have already been approved. That's why the beginning balance is so large. Chair Harrington, I believe, is exactly correct that the current investment in bike and ped projects and bike projects can't be sustained with the level of revenue that is coming in, as Commissioner Rogers also pointed out. And so the committee, as Chair Laird said, is looking at a much smaller potential package of projects for bike and ped improvements going forward in order to long-term balance the revenue and the expenditures. And so Chair Harrington is right that if we are going to continue to invest in, if the county is going to continue to invest in ped and bike projects as it has in the past, there'll have to be some supplemental funding from some, because I don't think it makes sense not to prioritize the basic maintenance function of the roads and streets. That's got to be first. And so that can't be the source of additional funding. It's got to be something else. Or we're just going to have to face the fact that we're only going to do 3 or 4 bike ped projects per year. And how long is the list? It's like 100, or I don't know. It's
2 million is 138 projects.
138 projects.
The entire list is 250, and it goes up to $6 million for the most.
I mean, there's enough there for the next 100 years. Anyway, that's my comment.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments?
I have one.
Okay.
I a couple weeks ago, at least, had the opportunity to read this year's budget equity report for the budget. And I see on the what is URMD slide that you talk about how this disjoint district has 41% BIPOC population. So my question is, how does and I'm remembering in my brain, and I have it posted on my bulletin board in my office, the Metro's uh, equity map and low income maps by houses. So I'm wondering, how does the advisory committee use the BIPOC information and the low income areas information to prioritize those underserved community member areas first when you're looking at project lists?
So each project has a variety of different scores that are looked at it. One of them is equity. There's transit, school, safety,
access.
Yeah.
Safety.
So there's a variety of scores in there that each project is scored against. And then we look at, and for every project, every advisory committee member looks at those to decide which ones they want. And a lot of times you're looking at that cumulative score and also, which ones are best, from an equity perspective, which ones are best from a, school access and making sure kids are safe. And so those are all put in there for each project. And we're constantly looking at, do we have the right scoring criteria? Is there something we're missing or something we need to change? So that is part of every one of the selection option scores.
Well, this county has decades of experience in having an equity column, but the number of points used for that column, it gets watered down compared to all the other points. And so that's why I asked, how does it prioritize underserved community member areas first? Have we ever looked at using that as a starting lens?
Not specifically, we have not, no. And Melissa described it accurately as far as how it has been done historically. And what we currently use is this very broad sorting of different elements within the community.
Yep.
The committee members, and the committee members then they look at each project based on a variety of factors. Some people put a priority on the equity element, some put it on the access to transit. It just kind of depends on those different, and then through the committee's collective, discussion and whatnot, that's how they get to that final selection. But it does not necessarily say, okay, we're going to start with this as far as the actual starting point of where a project would land. And there's no other element has that either, right? It's all just kind of lumped together as this, group of projects to be considered.
So I would add also, in terms of going forward, the committee has started to think about, very preliminarily, given the reduction in available resources, perhaps making some changes in our process in the future years, not the current year. There isn't time for that. But one of the things we could certainly consider, the committee could certainly consider, is weighting the equity element, giving it more weight. And perhaps it scores 2 or 3 instead of 1 point or something. So that's, certainly among the things that could be discussed at the committee level about as we go forward, making our selections.
I'm a scenario planner, it seems, by nature. And I think just for going through the thought exercise, I think it might be interesting to see what those areas are and those underserved lower income areas and the projects, and say, okay, what if we definitely did these, and my assumption in this story, underscore story, is then, okay, with what's left, how do we entertain all the other projects that are in other areas? It may tell us something, and it may tell us that for the extent of projects versus pure maintenance, that we need to do those areas first and see what it reveals. That's all.
Right. And we do that quite often with a variety of things. We do what if scenarios all the time. And we can certainly do that as well. I know.
Our advisory council on racial equity would expect you, I think, to do that.
Right.
And Chair, if I could, I would just say, I think we absolutely would look forward to revisiting, I think with the committee's input, how we're working on incorporating equity into those decisions. And I appreciate your suggestion about a scenario planning approach too. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I did want to just touch on briefly, I've asked Todd and Sherry and their team to do sort of a look forward assessment of URMD, getting at these questions around what is the future going to look like, knowing that we're likely to have to scale back the bike and pedestrian improvement program pretty significantly and focus on maintenance, and sort of projecting ahead revenues and the needs that we anticipate will continue to grow over time. So we're kind of doing this across almost all of our different programs. MSTIP, we're looking at the road fund, we're looking at the URMD as well. And so, it's just a continuous or a theme across all of these, and really the North Bethany district too, we just talked about. So really trying to assess what the long-term picture may look like and just making our best educated guesses right now about what the future may hold and what that would look like for us. And so that's all work that we're looking forward to. And I think as we're working on the URMD scenario as well, and the committee's actually in the process of looking at potential bike ped priorities. And so this is actually a really good time. I think that we could probably very quickly maybe reassess how we're incorporating equity into those decisions.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments from the committee? If not, then we move on to community input. And again, the guidelines are 2 minutes for an individual, 5 minutes per organization. I'll turn it over to Kevin. Mr. Moss.
Thank you, Chair Laird. I did not see anyone come in the room to sign up here in person with us. So would anyone online like to provide comments on the Urban Road Maintenance District for up to 2 minutes on the presentation you've heard? So we have one hand up, Patrick O'Clair. Patrick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
Yes, I'd just like to comment on things that I've heard about the budget for this year. When you take a look at the budget's presentation, some of that had both the current year budget and the proposed budget for next year. This year's budget, you thought you'd have about $4 million of contingency. And it looks like a lot of the activity that was planned for this year is not going to happen because you're beginning working capital for this coming year is going up by $7.2 million. And again, next year, you're projecting about $8.5 million worth of URMD bike and ped projects. And my guess is that that's not actually going to occur at that volume. In my experience in working for the city of Beaverton, the capital outlay projects that our engineering staff and public works departments come up with, they usually spent about 40 to 50% of what they asked for in their budget. And that's what I think was probably happening in this budget. And it's really hard to get a good snapshot by only taking a look at 2 years of activity. To get a real good feel, we needed to go back and maybe take a look at about 3 years worth of actual, what was budgeted, what actually occurred for a previous 3 years, and then taking a look at the trend that you see coming forward. Because I believe that probably the projects are the total cost of the project, and the project is usually 3 stages: design, and then bid, and then construction. That could take up to a 3-year period. That's the end of my comments.
Okay, thank you.
But I also note that we did receive your written public testimony dated Monday, May 29th as well. Just so you know, Mr. O'Clair.
Thank you so much for acknowledging that.
Yes. And it was included in the agenda package, so all committee members got it. Thank you.
All right. Would any other members wish to provide comment for up to 2 minutes? Give you just another moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any additional hands, Chair Laird.
Okay, thank you. All right, then with that, we move on. So we don't make any comments on the statements, right? Okay, so we move on to the main action for tonight, which is the motion to approve. So the FY 2023-24 budget for the Urban Road Maintenance District earned as proposed in the amount of 17,129,980, and the levy of the permanent property tax rate of 0.2456 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. May I have a motion to approve this budget and property tax rate?
So moved.
Thank you, Dick. A second?
Second, but you meant dollars. $0.2456.
Oh, okay.
Or 24.56 cents.
Yeah, okay, 0.2456 cents. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Thank you for the second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor, please raise your real or virtual hand. All opposed? All right, I think that was unanimous. Approved. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, so with that, we
We have an intermission till
Yes.
7:30.
yes. We will, we will adjourn for a while and we'll be back at 7:30 to do the ESPD. Thanks, everybody. Good job. I was going to say the same.
Probably. We're live here.
Right. Commissioner Commissioner Rogers, are you back with us? All right, Chair Laird, back to you.
Great. Well, thanks, Kevin, and thanks everybody for joining us. We are now on our second part of the meeting tonight, which is the discussion of the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District PD budget. And we have with us today Sheriff Pat Garrett, who will go over an overview of it, and then we'll have discussion. The discussion will be with the budget committee first, and then we'll open up to general public comments. So with that.
Do we do roll call first?
Oh,
Because we have Bruce Dickerson on now.
oh,
Bruce has been on.
Oh,
It's the same
okay.
committee.
yeah,
Okay.
it's Fernando now.
Sorry, the
That's
view of it changed.
Oh, yeah, he went to the top. You're at the
Yeah,
top of the list now.
That's what I'm noticing.
I went, and just for the record, just for record keeping, I'm Dickinson, Dickinson, just for voting. I take no,
Thank
no personal offense, just wanted to make sure the records were right.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you so much. All right, with that, take it away, Sheriff Garrett.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Laird, Budget Committee members, Washington County Sheriff Pat Garrett here. By way of summary, the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District was approved by commissioners and voters in 1987. They settled on a service level of about 1 officer per 1,000. That's about what you have in other urban areas in the county. The district generally comprises the urban unincorporated areas of the county. It's been supported by voters for its 35-year plus history, and most recently in May of 2022, making this July 1st the beginning of year 1 of the next 5-year levy cycle. This slide just shows the list of communities in the urban unincorporated area which are served by the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District. Services in the district include what you see here on this slide. It's a 911 response about half the time of the national average. Of course, following up incidents regarding neighborhood safety and livability, responding to the emerging complex problem with a challenge with overdose in the community by equipping deputies with naloxone and providing training and messaging to our community. Advanced training and crisis intervention to include supporting our mental health response teams, which divert, in many cases, folks from jail to medical assistance instead. And then, of course, responding to criminal investigations, both the most serious that you could imagine, and then other kind of thefts and quality of life crimes that are also important to the residents of the district. The Sheriff's Office total budget, so just to context of the total budget this year is 170 million. That is a 22% increase over the previous year's fiscal year's request. The increase is primarily due to the addition of the internal service funds charged to the department's general fund budgets this year. The pie chart shows the breakout by operational division of our budget across all funding sources. And of all of our funds, about when we focus on patrol, they're kind of on the right side of the pie chart. About 41% of our budget supports patrol operations. And in the middle of the slide, that table, you can see the breakout between the 3 funds that support patrol operations. And that's really what the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District services are. They're focused on patrol operations. And District Patrol is the largest portion of the patrol budget, as you can see. So just focusing on the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol budget request this year, this chart reflects the budget request, which is for Fund 182, the operational fund for ESPD. The budget request this year is $37.8 million. That represents an 11% increase from the previous year's request. And just going down the main components of this budget request, we'll start with personnel. That's about 2/3 of our budget. Funding people is really the majority of what this budget goes to do. And for us, this next fiscal year, that would support 118 police certified positions and 21.6 other professional positions. This budget includes one deputy position add over last year based on estimated population increase. I would move to materials and services next. That represents 18% of this year's budget request. And it supports communication services, defense tools, training, service contracts, other duty gear, and fleet costs. Next, I would just highlight the interdepartmental charges. So interdepartmental costs previously included the county's cost allocation plan. And as you know, they now are allocated in the materials and services budget. So what's left here? What's left here in interdepartmental is the Sheriff's Office administration, along with some IT projects. Next up, I would draw your attention to capital outlay. That represents replacement of 11 patrol vehicles that have reached their end of serviceable life. And then there's the other category there in the center on the right, and that represents mostly the cost of our dispatching services at about $1.2 million. Put that forward to Mr. Nunn.
So this slide here is just a picture of the county's website, and where if you want to find more information about the ESPD budget, it's over there, 1, 2, 3 over on the right-hand side. And we do have one amendment to discuss with the budget committee tonight, and we ask that you would adopt this, but it was brought to our attention from the last budget committee meeting. Mr. Steinbruggian, Commissioner Rogers brought it up, asking the question about burn rate and looking at the reference material here. And we discovered that the levy increase that was approved by the voters in May of 2022, 19 cents per thousand AV, was not included in the revenue estimate. So the amendment request to add that $3.7 million in as a revenue, and then the offsetting entry would be into contingency. So then looking at the budget material, you would notice that there wouldn't be that significant drop off in contingency from 14 million to 10 million. It would be from 14 million to 14 million. The proposed motion that will come later in these slides includes that amendment.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff Garrett and Craig Munn for the update on the amendment part. So now we move to budget committee questions and discussions. Are there any questions and discussions from the committee?
So I have one, thank you. Sheriff, you'll recall, I think when we had our first meeting, that I asked you the theoretical question of, gee, if you had another $2 million, where would you invest it? So I recognize the 3.7 million isn't new revenue, but it wasn't recognized revenue when the budget trade-offs were initially made and the proposed budget was put together. What are your thoughts now about putting it? I don't mean to put you on the spot here too much, but having it go into contingency as opposed to some of it going toward the houselessness problem that you had suggested, I think previously deserved more resources.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chair Laird, Committee Member Steinberg. I am certainly open to explore whatever possibilities there are as far as supporting funding to allow us to continue our program like the Houseless Outreach program. But I also recognize that the long-term forecast across the 5 years really is tracking in a direction where it needs to go to maintain a healthy ending fund balance. We do have a vacancy rate that we can be pretty confident about, just giving past history, at about 6 to 8%, which is going to perhaps afford us some flexibility. But I think my opinion stands that I would love to continue that program, that Houseless Outreach program that currently has one full-time deputy. But I will certainly leave that to the county administrator's office, whether or not that's feasible.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any other comments or questions from the budget committee?
Do
Yeah.
any of our ESPD budget committee members play a role on the ESPD advisory committee?
Yes, I do.
Yay, thank you. I appreciate that crossover.
Yeah, yeah, it really added to a really rich conversation in the last meeting and for Rebecca. Because you're a little further in the depth of what's going on, yeah.
So I'll ask Pat, this is a question that you may need to do a little bit of homework on, but if we go back to slide, I don't know, go back, we'll keep going, I'll tell you when to stop. There. So have those numbers changed much over the last few years? Percentages we're talking about, the enhanced patrol district 54%, general fund 29%, local option levy 17%, and then move over to the left side as to the allocations in the pie chart. I mean, are we pretty consistent from year to year on this, or is this moving in a different direction?
I don't think it's changed significantly, but I would also have to go back and look at the previous year to know for sure. And that would be my homework. I might just glance. Okay. I believe it's fairly consistent.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. The numbers just go up, but the allocation stays the same. That's what I'd like to think anyway, but yeah, okay.
Any other questions or comments from the, Commissioner Roy Rogers, your hand is back up again. I was missing it there for a while.
That's all right. Thank you. Commissioner Willis, question prompts me just to ask that. Hey, Pat, is there any subsidization in your mind from the general operations of the county sheriff's department and this particular fund? And by that, I mean, is it fully costed? For instance, for you, are you split between that activity and this one? And has anyone done a really good cost analysis so that we can be satisfied that there isn't any general fund support money going to the ESPD?
That's an absolutely fair question. And it's been more than a few years since the ESPD services and fund was audited. It has been audited by the county auditor, but we're going back more than a few years. And I'm absolutely open to having that revisited. It's not super complicated when you consider there are about 30,000 rural residents, and the general fund is staffed at a rate of about a half a deputy per thousand. To know from shift to shift what that allocation is, it is pretty basic. What we do see are ESPD deputies running out to cover on really dangerous priority calls to keep people safe, and then back into the district. And as I have discussed or described it before, that's the nature of the relationship with our city partners as well. They cover us, we cover them. They cover us in the rural areas at times. We cover our rural deputies in the areas at times. But we're absolutely happy to have that looked at again.
Melissa, if I could just follow up, and thank you, Pat. You've always been very transparent, done an excellent job. So I'm not inferring that there's any problem, but the Board of Commissioners in discussions, and I have no idea where the majority are, but we've been talking more and more about, what's a countywide service and what's a local service. And as I mentioned in the prior budget hearing, I was a member of that district. I'm a member of this one since I'm in urban unincorporated Washington County, and I should be paying my cost of service. I shouldn't be getting any subsidy. And so I just think it's fair that we can say that. And I recall the last time that we looked at this, and I thank you for being honest about it. It's been a while. And so I agree. It's not overly complex, but it would be an interesting exercise to understand that this is fully self-funded. So that's my point, and I'll stop with it.
Sounds good. And actually, looking at it the other way is also interesting, is the county is ESPD subsidizing the county, which seems like,
No, thank you.
from a patrol perspective, though, from a sheriff patrol perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Laird. Thank you, Commissioner.
Got it.
That's a really excellent observation.
All right. Any other comments from anybody?
I would just like to provide the comment. I don't have any questions. And I could make all kinds of positive comments about our the ESPD patrol and so on and so forth. But the comment that I want to share with this group that came up with the elected officials briefing on the proposed budget circumstances on May 3rd, I think was the date, was the sheriff offers patrol services, contract services to a few select cities in Washington County, such as North Plains, Cornelius, and then Banks as well. And that is full cost coverage there. And we had one of the city councilors from the city of North Plains come and speak about how they were struggling with the cost of that and wishing that the county would subsidize their city patrol services, which, as you can imagine, is a question of fairness, right? You know, cost coverage is important, and I appreciate all the diligence that the county and the sheriff's department follows so that we can have confidence that situations like that, there is cost coverage. And our Washington County mayors have mentioned to me several times how much they value our sheriff's office and that mutual aid that you spoke to, Sheriff. So your department's doing a great job under your leadership. Thank you.
Well, I think we should go on the record saying that Commissioner Rogers is more than willing to pay 100% of the cost. So, you know, we could prepare a special bill just for his household if you like that. Anyway.
I bet his calls for service are pretty darn low.
That's not what I hear.
We can make up some. No, but Pat, I did want to say that a few weeks ago, I did ask you if you, something along what you just asked him, if he had a little bit more money, what would he do with it? And your response was add another patrol deputy. And I said, okay, we got several positions open. At the point in time that you fill those positions, then let's have that conversation. Because first of all, I'd really be happy if you.
That's a problem we'd like to have.
That's exactly right. True. But absolutely would love to have that conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the committee? If not, then we'll move into the community input. And I'll be turning over to Kevin Moss. Each individual has 2 minutes to share their input or their comments, and 5 minutes per organization.
Right.
So, Mr. Moss.
Thank you much. I did not see anyone come in the room to sign up here in person. Would any members viewing this meeting online via Zoom like to provide public comment on the ESPD presentation that you've heard tonight and the Budget Committee's questions for up to 2 minutes? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Laird.
All right. All right, with that, then we move to have a motion to approve the budgets. The motion, as stated, is the FY 2023-24 budget for the Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, ESPD, as amended in the amount of $52,361,526, and levy the ESPD permanent property tax rate of 6.6365, so 6365 cents, right, per 1,000 of assessed value.
No, keep going.
And approving the ESPD local option levy rate of 0.83 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. Correct?
No,
Did I
not
say it
quite.
that way?
$0.83 and $0.6365 or 63.65 cents or 83.0 cents.
Yeah. I thought I
You said the
83 cents.
0.83.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, it'll be great that the next meeting we'll have another chair, and that's Dick, and he clearly gets this, so it'll be much better next
No,
year.
no,
You're doing a great
pressure.
job.
Pressure.
All right. So,
My slide rule and get it right.
all right. With that, do we have anyone who would like to make this motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dick. And a second? Second. Thank you, Pam. Okay, any comments? Commissioner Trees. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, are we ready to vote? Everybody in approval to pass this motion, please raise your hand, virtual or real. All those opposed? The motion is carried.
Good
Thank
job,
you.
Chair.
All right. With that, our time here is done. I want to thank everybody I want to thank all the people on the committee, especially our lay people, for attending, and everybody in the room here that participated and attended and came to hear this. The next steps, the next meeting is June 1st, tomorrow at 5:30, where the big Washington County budget will be presented, as well as SDL #1. So with that, any other comments, questions from anybody before we adjourn?
You might want to mention that June 20th is the adoption date.
That's true. And then after we approve tomorrow or have that discussion with that budget, then June 20th is the formal adoption of the budget in the Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners meeting. So, thank you. And with that, no other things? No other comments, questions? Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Very good.